Good morning, everybody. I did my policy brief on the implications of marijuana in Idaho. I'm going to begin by starting with my executive summary. Idaho law prohibits the possession, usage, and distribution of the substance marijuana. This policy determination is supported and upheld by utilizing information regarding the increase of usage through legalization, the unintended consequences through legalization, crime increases through legalization, and marijuana's harmfulness to its recipients. Although the previously listed supporting evidence is relevant to maintaining the current stance taken for marijuana, there are also benefits to weigh against the currently held policy. The benefits fall under the term opportunity cost. Government officials are forced to abide by a budget. This budget puts restrictions on the funding, depending on how much has been spent or will be spent on which particular agenda. If funding is utilized in an area such as the criminalization of marijuana, then law enforcement budget is weakened, preventing authorities from mobilizing resources for more severe acts of crime. The decriminalization of marijuana, or the decision to criminalize marijuana in the state of Idaho, not only restricts the fiscal budget, but also creates implications such as continued arrests of particular age groups and minorities. My recommendation is to decriminalize marijuana, which would allow for flexibility in the government's fiscal budget, instill law enforcement with more funding, allowing them to focus more resources towards dangerous areas of crime, and aid in the reduction of societal stigmas that encourage ageism and oppression. Currently, Idaho policy states that possession, usage, or distribution of marijuana is illegal. The law creates a number of implications within the government's budget program, as well as a stigmatized societal consequence. The issue in focus is to make adjustments in Idaho marijuana policy. These adjustments are an effort to decriminalize users and marijuana so that the fiscal and societal fallout begins to show reduction. Furthermore, the effort to decriminalize marijuana would come with restrictions. The aim is to reduce the financial expenditure and societal inflictions related to marijuana and create a benefit in its stead, providing a government-imposed tax on the substance and requiring the sale of the substance to be regulated and distributed through approved establishments would be the suggested outlet for this policy. In 2006, the Idaho criminal justice budget totaled around $685 million. I'm going to give you a breakdown of how that money was utilized. About $276 million was used for law enforcement, $148 million was used for court and lawful services, and then $261 million was used in corrections. And then I'm going to give you an estimate of how much of that was used for marijuana arrests, just by multiplying the percentage of arrests dedicated to marijuana-related cases by the total annual budget, which was $685 million. The estimation is $28 million were spent on marijuana arrests in the year 2006. Although it is an estimate and is 10 years old, or the data is 10 years old, $28 million is a sizable amount of funding that could be utilized for the programs that are more damaging and dangerous to the state. The statistics are merely an example, providing relatable numbers for current policy issues. For further evidence that criminalization of marijuana is a detriment to our nation, more specifically our state, according to the U.S. News, the FBI released data revealing that in 2014, American officers arrested one person every 45 seconds for using marijuana or possessing it. The article also notes a significant nationwide increase in marijuana-related arrests in 2014. Despite the laws and policies advocating against marijuana, usage is on the rise. Decriminalizing marijuana would relieve financial and physical resources to be redistributed in areas of great need, such as Idaho rape cases. In 2007, resolved rape cases are reported at a measly 37%. This meant that if there were 500 known cases of rape reported in Idaho, only 187 of them were resolved with an arrest. Additionally, 62% of assault cases resulted in arrest, and only 79% of murder cases were resolved with an arrest. The decriminalization of marijuana would allow state officials to reallocate funds to close the margins in such areas as rape, assault, and murder, making the state we live in more protected from violent crimes. In addition to the variety of crimes that are more dangerous than marijuana, there are also other substances that are by far more fatal and statistically underrepresented and regulated by law. Most prominently, opiates and cocaine. In 2007, there were a total of 6,017 drug-related arrests in Idaho. Only 152, which is 3%, of these arrests involved opiates and cocaine. These numbers significantly underrepresent the demographic using opiates and cocaine in Idaho. Altering the criminalization policies toward marijuana would create new avenues for confronting drugs that are truly harmful to its user. Lastly, the social implications of the current policy illegalizing marijuana in the state of Idaho cast a large stigma across minorities, specifically the black community, and across age, causing ageism and perceived behavioral deviance. The norms of our state declare that marijuana is bad, therefore if you're associated with it, you're bad for using it or possessing it or caught selling it. The general label for such an individual is deviant. Statistically, more blacks and individuals in their youth are reprimanded for the use of marijuana, and because of the prejudice existing toward both groups, this prejudice is only encouraged. To decriminalize marijuana would help fight the societal stigma associated with being a youth, but more importantly with the black community. Current marijuana policy exists to prevent the increase of usage through legalization, unintended consequences through legalization, crime increases through legalization, and to restrict harmfulness to its recipients. Although the law does address the issues previously mentioned, it does little for what can only be assumed as the unintended consequences. With hindsight, the opportunity cost needs to be examined, and the laws implemented toward regulating marijuana need to be measured against the greatest need so that change can be made for the better. The policy under scrutiny is marijuana as a criminalized substance. The current approach may stand for justice but is short-sighted when examined, only seeking to control an individual's behavior through rule and law. This leaves the unintended consequences of rule and law without resolve. Some of these consequences were previously reviewed earlier on in the presentation. To address them and the short-sighted nature of the criminalization of marijuana, state officials need to review the ramifications of their policies. The recommendation is the implementation of a new policy, legalizing marijuana in the state of Idaho. This would begin the decriminalization of the substance. Additionally, regulated distribution through licensed entities would further the cause, and lastly, taxing the substance upon purchase would provide financial merits for the state. That's the end of my policy brief. I will read my appendices. Marijuana was initially outlawed under the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. The hearings prior to the implementation of the act revolved around men of color and their sexual ill intentions with white women. With prejudice leading, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 successfully put a stop to the sale of the substance. The act was eventually ruled unconstitutional and replaced by the Controlled Substance Act in the 1970s. The Controlled Substance Act allocates substances by severity. Marijuana was placed in the most severe category with an asterisk by it for further review. Today, the United States has had 23 of its states legalize the use of marijuana under the medical context. Now, marijuana has been proven to act as a remedy for a variety of illnesses. These illnesses include reducing muscle spasms brought on by multiple sclerosis, treating nausea caused by chemotherapy, illness causing a poor appetite such as HIV, seizure disorder, or disorders, and Crohn's disease. Further denial of these benefits related to legalizing marijuana would only hurt our fellow Idahoans. That's the end of my presentation. I know it went a little long, so sorry. I hope you guys have a good morning and a good class. Bye-bye.